to be North Carolina's next state superintendent of public instruction. Certainly, I am overwhelmed at the opportunity to help guide and lead our public school system with over 1.4 million students and administer a budget of $11 billion plus annually and support over 2,500 schools. It's a special moment for me. And so I start there with an amount of gratitude. That gratitude then extends to so many other people who did so many things to support our campaign. I mean, I think about folks who wrote postcards, who hosted events and greeted voters at the polls, donated to our campaign in varying amounts. I mean, we had donations that y'all know were at the maximum, but we also had donations that were literally $1, $2 as well. Folks who just raised their hand and said, I want to do something to support this campaign. And so all of them, I have to be sure to thank all of them. And I'm doing it, I guess, through you as well. And to be sure that they know that they made an incredible difference to our campaign. Yeah, after the primary, I said that this race was bigger than me. I said that the very soul of public education was on the ballot this November, and that it would take champions of public education to meet this moment. I am so pleased and thankful that champions of public education did meet this moment with regards to this race. So now, what comes next? We're going to continue doing what I just did, which is to be sure that we spend some time thanking folks who did so many amazing things in our campaign. It will be certainly probably next to impossible to do it in the right way and do it with everybody in the way that we want. But folks must know how much I appreciate all that they've done. So we're going to spend some time doing that. We're going to spend a moment or two resting and reflecting as well. I think about this race and how long that it was. That I came out of retirement to run for this race, and that started well over a year ago now. And so, we need to spend a moment to rest and then reflect on, the magnitude of the moment. We need to reflect on the journey itself. And then after we do that, we're going to get to work. Folk who know me know very well that I'm one of those that when I commit to something, I'm going to work with almost without ceasing. And in this instance, the work that I'll be doing will be on behalf of the children who are in our public school system, to be sure that we move it to a place where it is seen as the very best school system in the entire country. That's going to require a lot of work. It's going to require a lot of people to join us in this work. Those who supported the campaign, as well as those who did not, as well as those who may not have chosen to even participate in this process. And it's going to take the work of our students as well. So that when we start on January the 1st, we all must be ready to implement what will be a bold vision, direction, and plan for our public schools. Our children, their families, the communities where they reside, our state, our state's economy, and beyond all depend on it. And so that's what will come next. But as I conclude my comments and go back to, and then open it up for any questions, I want to go back to where I started, which is gratitude. Um, it is an honor and a privilege to be selected, to be elected as North Carolina's Superintendent of Public Instruction. I feel incredibly blessed, and I thank all that had a part to play in it. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Lucy, and let you guide us through the question and answer session.
Perfect. Thank you, Mo. I saw Jonathan had his hand up already, so I'm going to go to you and ask you to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Congratulations, Superintendent of Public Instruction-elect Mo Green. I have a couple questions, but I think the first one that I'd like to start with is you are coming after Catherine Truitt. Is there anything that you feel specifically that you want to do differently or change transitioning from her administration and how she ran public instruction to what you envision?
Thank you so much for that question. And I want to actually start with the opposite end of that, which is what, if anything, I might do that will be a continuation. And so I want to spend this moment, first of all, thanking Catherine Truitt for her incredible service to the students of North Carolina. Yeah, she, I think, did some great work, particularly around early literacy skills and really trying to put North Carolina on a path to where more and more of our students will be reading on grade level by the third grade. And so I intend to continue that. Throughout the campaign, I shared that I actually served on an implementation team with her as we worked with 5 other states to work on the implementation of the early literacy skills. And so that'll be something that I plan to continue. Yeah, as far as things that we will think about doing differently, yeah, I want to spend some time, with her, understanding really it's always having been a leader and coming into an organization. It's always a bit challenging when you're on the outside and say, I'm going to change this or do this differently, and not really having a full appreciation of why a particular current leader may have done something a particular way. So I want to spend some time with her understanding why it is that there are certain things that she did the way that she did it. And then we'll figure out how we want to move forward. But I can tell you that the things that we're going to be focused on are the things that I outlined in our strategic direction and plan and vision. Those things include focusing on certainly academic achievement, but also character development for our students as well. She, I think, has been a proponent of school choice. I am as well. However, we may have differing definitions of that. For example, I believe that taxpayer funds should be used to support school choice in our public schools and public school system. And I think she might have been more open to those dollars being used for other opportunities as well, while supporting our public school system. And so that is a distinction between us. And so that'll be something that I'll be lifting up. I think it's important for this position, unlike any other position in state government, that this position is called upon to elevate public schools and to advocate for public schools And so that's what I intend to do, recognizing that families and parents and um, you may want to have other choices, but this position I think is called upon to say we need to have those dollars going to support the constitutionally required public school system.
Thank you for that question. And I know, Jonathan, you have your affiliation in your title, but if folks don't have it, can you be sure to say it when you're called on? Hannah.
Hi, Hannah Van Wezen McClellan here with Education in C. Um, just wanted to ask, what are your plans for the staffing of DPI and how you're thinking about bringing in new folks versus keeping some of the current staff at DPI on board?
Yeah, so this is going to be one of those situations where I will want to spend some time with Catherine Truitt to understand what she sees as the strengths of her organization and her leadership team, and where she and why she organized the organization the way that she did. Again, it's always easy to come in from the outside and say, well, I'm going to do it a different way. But I am one that always likes to first understand why it is the way it is first. And so that's to go to Catherine Truitt, understand who's on the team, and then we will begin to make some decisions. I imagine that there will be some different folks in the organization under when I become the state superintendent, but how many and where they will be and what positions they will hold, what duties they will, have, it's far too early for me to speak to that.
All right, we're going to go to Destiny.
Hi, Destiny Patterson here with WREL. Congratulations on your win. I wanted to ask you, the perception of public schools has been waning across the country. And why do you think that is? And how do you plan to shift that narrative?
Yeah, so I think that it is waning probably for a multitude of reasons. To include, I do think that there are concerns about student achievement in our public schools. I think that there is, a movement afoot to disparage our public school system. And that then has caused others to think, well, perhaps it's not a good system. I think there are those who have come into, this sort of era of our existence, really not being proponents of government and of institutions, and want to suggest that there should be other ways forward. And so I think, there are probably other things I could lift up, but those would be among the things that I think folks would share about why there is perhaps some waning support of public schools. And so for me, then, the way to counteract that is number one, to acknowledge and respect those concerns and others that folks raise. And then two, throughout this campaign, I talked about to be sure that we actually celebrate the good in public education and that we revere educators. And part of that is to help us begin to change the mindsets of folks who may not think that way, so that they can see a broader picture of what our public school system is like. So for example, you'll hear much talk about failing public schools. And so then I would, turn around and say, like in Guilford County Schools, you folks would say, schools are failing, right? And I would turn around and say, yeah, but this past year, U.S. News and World Report identifies the number one elementary school, the number one middle school, the number one high school in the state, and the number one high school in the country. And in each instance, the number one elementary school is a Guilford County school. The number one middle school is a Guilford County school. The number two high school is a Guilford County school. The number one high school is a Guilford County school in the state, and the number one high school in the entire country. And so we have to begin to elevate those things, even as we address the concerns that folks have. We have to celebrate the good. We have to be sure that we're elevating the profession of educators and revering them because they do the transformative work for our students and beyond, right? And so that's part of the method. The second and critically important and ultimately more important beyond sort of mindset shift is we have to improve outcomes for our students, right? And so that's again where you may hear me have talked about, when I started with Guilford County Schools and we had the most low performing schools in the entire state of North Carolina on the old accountability metrics, and the work that so many individuals did to turn that around, right? And so that is incredibly important too, because we don't need to have folks raise up that concern as a reason to not be supportive of our public schools. So those would be the things that I would lift up. Certainly, it's more complex than that, but those would be the things that I would lift up as we move our public schools forward and address the concerns that people have.
So we have time for a couple more. We may get to the three hands I see. Let's go to Liz.
Hi, Liz Schlemmer, North Carolina Public Radio. Can you talk a little bit about how support from educators may have helped you in your campaign? We've seen Republicans win this office in the last two elections. Do you have any evidence of maybe Republican-leaning teachers supporting you?
So at this point, I don't have any direct, certainly comprehensive information of, certain, educators or, supporting our campaign. Certainly anecdotally, I can speak to many, many educators who indicated support for our campaign and did that without. I mean, some would say that they're, Republicans or unaffiliated, but most didn't articulate, what party they're associated with. They just simply, appreciated that they had an opportunity to be part of a campaign that would elevate them in positive ways, and we felt that across the state. We actually did some special educator events and had, remarkable response to those by educators. And just so Liz, you and I understand the term, when I'm talking about educators, I'm certainly talking about our teachers, but it's really well beyond that. I'm talking about everyone who has a part to play in our educational system. So cafeteria workers, custodians, bus drivers, et cetera, as well. So that's what I would say at this moment. Perhaps if there is an ability to do more deep analysis of the votes, perhaps something will reveal itself. But at this point, that's the best answer I can give you.
We'll go to Amber.
Hello, Amber Lake with WFMY News 2 here. You won 65% of the voters in Guilford County. You were superintendent here for 7 years. What worked for you here in our county that's going to help you in this new role that you just won? Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll start with something that started when I became superintendent of Guilford County, and that is something that's now a brand, which is called Mo Wants to Know. So it is that I listen, learn, and then lead, right? And so that's something that I plan to take forward. Because in this complicated environment of how to move forward public education. It's going to be important to listen to others, to hear those nuggets of where we can move things forward, and then try to move things forward appropriately. Second, certainly I believe in bold visions. And so, what I put forward in Guilford County Schools after doing a listening tour was a vision around academic excellence that included the quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., intelligence plus character, that being the goal of true education, and a focus on being excellent. And so I don't shy away from saying there, said we're going to be the best school system in the state. I don't shy away from saying now the goal is to be the best system in the country. The third thing is once the bold vision is set, is to try to hire well. I was blessed, to have incredible folks to work with in Guilford County Schools, both in my leadership team and other administrators and other educators throughout our system that bought into that vision. And then a board that was supportive of the vision and worked alongside us as well. Fourth, certainly have to have the kind of support from parents and community to make this work. I mean, it will not work well if we don't have parents and community involved in this work. And so we'll, as I did here, try to engage all community members and parents in this work. And then I'll end with, students. One thing that seemed to really work well was that we'll try to take to the state level is to respect that the students often have the best answers about how we ought to move things forward. And so we need to respect our students, give them that opportunity to be part of their educational journeys as well, because we're going to demand a lot from them, but we also need to then hear them when they raise concerns and try to address them as well. So those would be some things that we'll take forward. The final thing I will say is it's often easy to say, well, we're going to do things like we did in Guilford County Schools. And that would be a terrible mistake. Because there are already, I think, incredible things also happening in other places, both in and outside of our state. There are folks who, will bring things to the table that will be different than what we did in Guilford County, but can be maybe even more effective. And so we have to embrace those things as well. So I don't want anyone to think, well, Guilford County is coming to Raleigh and spreading across the state. It's not going to be that way.
We'll go to Carly, and then that may be our last one.
Congratulations again. I'm curious in how you're thinking about the election results in terms of whether it may be a kind of repudiation or some sort of commentary on the Moms for Liberty vision of education, or that kind of realm that was represented by your opponent.
Yeah, so thank you for that question, and I'm happy to stay on if there are additional hands. I don't want folks to not feel like they can't get an opportunity to have a conversation with me. So we'll stick around for a little bit longer. But in response to your question, I would just say this: statewide races are traditionally very, very close races. And so, there are going to be outliers on occasion, certainly, for example, with the governor's race. That was, by comparison, an outlier. But even in that situation, the person who came in second got, right at 40% of the vote. And so, I think we need to understand that context first before we start then sort of saying, well, it means X or it means Y. these races are traditionally very, very close. And so I think we start there. I think the second thing we can then say is that certainly this is a moment where what was presented to voters were, I think, a pretty stark choice, and more decided to choose um, the one that wants to have a bit more of a positive way of going forward, that recognizes that you hear me utilize that term about champions of public education and celebrating the good in public education and revering educators. I think that is a result of this election, is that a bit more folks decided that that's the way forward. But for those who didn't choose me, I want to also be abundantly clear that I hear the concerns. I do. I'm a listener. And so I hear what many folks have raised up as concerns and will invite people to engage in a conversation that allows us to figure out how, perhaps with the way that I approach the work, to be heard and to help us improve public education as well.
Great, and we'll go to Jennifer.
Thank you. Thanks for your time today, Mo, and congratulations. I had a quick question about health issues with children. What is the top health issue facing our school children that you want to tackle during your administration, and how are you going to approach that with a GOP-led legislature that may not be amenable to spending the money that you might need for those programming?
Yeah, so again, this is one of these questions where I've greatly appreciated, and I know it from the out. I can give you an answer from the outside looking in, and then we'll see, what it looks like once I'm in the role. So from the outside looking in, as I have conversations with folks across the state and do my own sort of listening and learning, I would say mental health challenges would be the top issue that I think our students are facing. And that then shows up then in various ways, sometimes inappropriate behaviors, as an example of the mental health challenges that students are facing. And so I do think that then this is going to be a place where we've got to have the kind of conversations with the General Assembly to see if we can get more resources to support our students. I know that there are a lot of folks who don't see or think that maybe focusing on mental health issues is core to educating our students, and I would actually suggest that I'd want to have conversations to help illuminate why I think that may not be the right way to think about it. If we can get students' mental health issues addressed, then we can allow them to be able to receive the education they so richly deserve. The way that I'll work with the General Assembly is, as I said earlier, it'll be a Mo wants to know effort, where I'll do a lot of listening. I'll try to hear the nuggets of what they are, how they approach and think about things. And then we'll figure out how we can move forward. We'll certainly put data in front of them, like, for example, school psychologists, their association would say that the ratio should be 1 to 500. Right now, we're at 1 to 1,800 on average across the state, which means that in some instances, we're even well above that number. And that isn't going to be effective for our students. So that'll be how I will approach the work. And then finally, I'll just say this. This is not going to be Mo Green by himself. This does not work if everybody's looking to me to be the sole voice for public education. I'm certainly willing, as appropriate, to be the lead voice, but also recognize that as appropriate, there has to be other voices who may have important roles to play as well. And so the work that I will do, and if I'm effective, will be to bring along a whole coalition of folks who can articulate certain things, because oftentimes I know that people hear it, may not hear it from me, but may hear it from somebody else.
All right, we'll go to Lauren.
Hi there. Thanks for staying on, Mo. Congratulations. And Lucy, thank you for answering all of my emails from WGHP here in High Point. So I want to speak a little bit about resources. You know, Guilford County voters, they struck down a tax referendum that would have put more money in teachers' pockets here in Guilford County. We know Guilford County is not the only county struggling with recruiting and retention, and it all comes down to dollars and cents. So tell me a little bit about, you know, how would you rank teachers' pay in terms of a priority list, and what can be done to you know, put more money in, you know, our educators' pockets?
Yeah, thank you. So, first of all, I would say it is extremely high on the priority list. So you will hear me talk about, I've got 6 pillars, if you will, and 2 of those are we need more funding in our public schools overall, and then we need to revere educators, which includes increased compensation for our educators. And so it's at the very top of the list of things that I think we've got to focus on. And so part of this is, I think, again, we have to listen to folks who are of a different mind, that think we are putting enough money into our public school system, and perhaps help them think about things in a different way. I also believe that one of the things that I have, and I've been part of this, that we have done, is we have tried to cobble together a compensation program where at the core of it is inadequate funding of our public school educators. And so you start with this base that is too low, and then you try to cobble together all these things, incentives to recruit and retain and for performance, and maybe some dollars if you going back to school, and the all kinds of different things to try in some ways to get the compensation up. And so part of what I think we've got to do is, we've reached a point where all that cobbling together, we need to come and enter a moment of saying, maybe it's time for us to look at that comprehensively and strip it all the way down and get the base compensation to a higher level. And so what is it that may have to go, or what else may need to be added to allow us to get the base compensation at a level that will then do the recruitment, retention, performance, celebration, et cetera? Because if we can get that right, then we may not need some of these other things, certainly in the magnitudes that we have them now. And I think that's going to be true not only for compensation, but for other things that we've done in our educational system. That's why you've heard me say that this is a complex educational endeavor. And I think it requires someone who understands this at a much more complex level to be able to help us unpack what we've done, not criticize it, because I'm sure folks have tried multiple and wonderful and varied ways. But maybe it's time for us to come back from that and say, what would happen if we design something differently that might allow us to have more folks say, I'm willing to buy into that. I'm willing to put more money into base compensation as a result for educators as well.
All right, are there any last questions? It should be asking you to unmute.
Okay, thank you very much. And this is Kern Huey from the News and Observer. Congratulations. I know you had said earlier that statewide races are close, but how concerning is it to you that a person who accused public schools of being indoctrination centers and is populated by people who said were groomers, who are promoting a trans agenda, got 49% vote and nearly became the next superintendent?
Yeah. So, yeah, as I said earlier, I do think that these races are going to be very, very close. So, I think, we have to understand almost regardless of who would have been the final two, they probably start off with 40+% of the vote. We have to sort of understand that regardless of what folks might say, that is just the reality that we end up in. And I would say maybe even up to like almost 45% of the vote. So that's just the reality in North Carolina in this moment, regardless almost of what someone might say. I do think, though, that it is concerning that that my opponent almost was elected, having put out the sort of comments and disparaging remarks she made about our public schools and about our various communities. The kind of violent rhetoric that she espoused and said. I think it's concerning. I think it is concerning. But I also want to say this. The result has occurred. And the result is that, more folks chose, as I said earlier, a more positive way forward. And so, having gotten that result, I think we have to be sure that we hear the concerns, hear what's underneath maybe some of that rhetoric, and be sure that we address the substance of some of then what's underneath some of that rhetoric. But we're going to do it in a much more positive way than perhaps those who voted for her may have wanted it done. And so I think what you're hearing from me is I don't dismiss what's underneath some of what's said, even as I do dismiss what was actually said, to be sure that we hear those concerns and address them appropriately as we move forward.
All right. Is there anyone who has not asked a question that would like to go? I know Jonathan and Liz both have follow-up. Nobody new? We'll go to Jonathan and then Liz, and then we'll close out.
So I'm curious about student discipline. I cover education in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area, so obviously CMS, and I don't mean to call them out, but there have been instances of serious student violence in the last couple of years, especially coming out of the pandemic. This kind of goes back to your answer on the mental health challenges. What do you think needs to be done to properly address student discipline issues? I've talked to Superintendent Hill numerous times about this, that there was an obvious worsening and change post-pandemic in behavioral issues, not just by students, but by their parents on school campuses. What is going to be your message, or what is your plan to address student discipline?
Yeah. So I do think that we have to have a number of things put in place. I think I don't want to suggest that our schools and school systems don't already have lots in place, but we'll have to have continued conversations about what is needed and where we need to prioritize limited dollars so that we can improve the level of appropriate behavior by our students, and also address issues with parents as well. And so the things that I would lift up are things that I lifted up earlier, to include mental health professionals and being sure that our students have more access to mental health professionals. I think we do have to be sure that we have appropriate engagements with law enforcement, and that may require additional resources be provided in certain situations as well. And then you also need to know that I think that um, you know appropriate behavior has to be taught, and it has to be something that is um, done constantly and consistently, and it needs to be more than simply if someone does something wrong, here's the consequence. Because I don't know that may work some, but I don't know that that ultimately tells folks what's the positive, appropriate behavior, as opposed to just simply saying, well, that was not the right way to do things. And so that's where I do think we're going to have to spend more time and resources um, helping our students learn positive and appropriate behavior. And so that's where you hear me say very clearly that I do think that character development is equally as important as academic achievement. And so that is a move away from perhaps folks thinking that operates on the edges, to a place where folks need to understand that I think it's equally as important. And so we'll work on how that then gets rolled out across the state. I want to engage lots of folks in that conversation to be sure that we do it in ways that will work for our students, and we'll engage our students in that conversation as well.
All right, we'll go to Liz.
Liz Schlemmer, WUNC. Thanks again for being so generous with your time today. I really appreciate that. Wanted to talk about campaign contributions. So you significantly outraised Morrow and past campaigns for state superintendent. How were you able to raise nearly $3 million? And can you talk about how those contributions helped you?
Yeah, so was incredibly blessed to have so many folks, both in and outside North Carolina, donate to our campaign. And the way that it was raised was a pretty comprehensive effort that certainly included having many, many conversations with many individuals about the importance of this race. It included certainly me. I was blessed to have been in connection with lots of folks in lots of different arenas across the state. And so, as an example, I was a partner in a major law firm in North Carolina. I was the executive director for the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, which supports organizations and individuals across the entire state. And so, could have conversations with folks that perhaps others who have run for this position simply don't have those kinds of connections. I think it also included a recognition of what happened. So, and we raised almost more than had been raised in any race before in the primary. Yeah, so this really has a lot of this has very, at the outset, I want to be clear that this isn't just what I'm about to say, what happened after the primary, because we were already, at a place that we had done, really remarkable fundraising. But certainly then after the primary, when people, I think, understood that the very soul of public education was on the ballot, that more and more organizations and individuals, decided that it was incredibly important to contribute to this campaign as well, and so that certainly helped. And then I was fortunate. I mean, I had a team, a small team, but a team of folks who did incredible work in so many different arenas, including fundraising, that supported our fundraising efforts to get us to the $3 million mark. How did it make a difference? So it made a difference in allowing us to communicate with voters in multiple and varied ways, including certainly through things as like postcards and mailers in the primary and digital media and television in the general election. As well. And so, in those, you have to, in these sort of close races, that kind of level of communication could make all the difference. And so, thankfully, we were able to have the kind of resources to be able to communicate with lots of voters in varied ways during this election.
All right. Well, thank you all so very much for joining us.
Yeah, let me conclude this way, Lucy, as you're wrapping up. For those who know me, from my time in other roles, you'll know that what I'm about to say is not new. I need for our children, for us to have, and us being you, the media, and me, in my role as state superintendent of public instruction, to have the kind of relationship that will allow us to do ultimately right by children. And so that will, at times, mean that you have to be very critical of what I may do or our organization will do. And I will welcome that and appreciate that. But I also will hope that you'll understand that this is bigger than always trying to just simply tell the news. We have to do this for our children. And so I'm calling on you to join us in what this can be. And so be critical when appropriate, but also, I hope, be positive when appropriate as well. Thank you for giving me this time. I hope you'll see that this is the way I operate. My time is your time, because you will be able to spread the message to many more people in many more ways than I will be able to do it. And so I want to thank you for y'all giving me this time this morning. Let's have a good relationship going forward.
Thank you all so much. And with that, have a wonderful day, and we will be in touch.